I don't think it goes above Moonraker, because even though Moonraker is the point where they pretty much lost their way in what was James Bond because they were chasing trends too much. It's kind of what this movie does, honestly.
Yeah.
All the pandering things that you complain about with this movie, in a way, it's like the updated version where like...
Put in the femme-powered character that Bond doesn't bang, take a main character and make him gay out of nowhere and never address it so we can put out PR statements saying,
whatever,
Bond is progressive. As usual, this is where I get in trouble because as we've learned from this whole experiment, the moment you criticize something, people go right to the extreme that you hate that thing. For example, if I as a man criticize a woman, most people don't see beyond the optics of a man expressing something negative about a woman. Therefore, that guy, me, must hate women. And I'm not as big as Gunther.
I think you're a little more emotional about the fact that a woman and a man are fighting and she beats him.
But that's...
No, that is what it is. That is what it is. And you think that is stupid.
Yeah,
but
that is what it is. You are too emotional about a man and a woman fighting and a woman beating a man. She's not only
smart. She's not a bodybuilder. She's fucking smart.
She
didn't run Gunther over with a car. She brutalized him in a fight, which is stupid. That's insulting to her character. Her character isn't a fucking brute. Her character is being really fucking street smart. She could have done something smart. Use her brain to kill him.
You just don't think
literally
that women
throw
could
him
kick
into
a guy's ass.
She literally throws him.
Think that a woman could kick a guy's ass.
This is the progressive mindset that anybody can do anything, but for that to work within a story, it has to be believable. It has to be set up. Otherwise, it's using the mask of progress to cover blatantly lazy writing. I don't blink an eye when Nomi does some awesome spy stuff because she's a 00. You don't get to 00 status without being awesome. And it's not like she doesn't earn her stripes. But so is Bond, and even he has his physical limitations. Every single time James Bond has fought someone bigger than him, he's had to do something creative in order to compensate. Something that actually takes some effort to dream up and execute on a filmmaking level. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't really even blink an eye when Paloma does awesome stuff either, because I understand that it's all tongue-in-cheek.
This is gonna go brilliantly.
I know. I've done 3 weeks training.
3 weeks training?
Really?
More or less.
If Paloma was in Die Another Day, I would have loved her. But in a movie that I'm supposed to take seriously, she's just there for the brain-dead pandas. The irony is that these same kind of people claim to champion equality, and yet they are programmed to think women are beyond reproach, which is the opposite of equality. Such people are easily panda'd. You put a hot chick on screen and she flips around while being hot and acting tough with zero substance to her, otherwise in a movie you're supposed to take seriously, and I see it for what it is. People abiding obvious laziness and uncreativity because they're too scared to be labeled a bigot in today's retarded-ass social climate, while also kind of being a simp. It's very easy to pull off this big dumb action stuff, especially in a single sequence. It's much more difficult to craft a character with some actual strength over the course of a whole film. Vesper never threw a single punch in her entire movie, and yet the turmoil she went through makes her a significantly stronger character than this cartoonish Paloma will ever be. And the filmmakers pulled this off with setup and payoff, the very essence of what makes storytelling effective. But when it comes to Tracy Bond, they didn't just fail to set her up as a fighter, they actively set her up as a physically weak person who doesn't deserve a fight scene. It's as lazy as giving someone like Boris a fight scene, or Lashif. It just doesn't work and undermines their pre-established character. Can you imagine Boris dying by way of some stupid, predictable fight scene versus the classic and wholly original?
Yes! I am invincible!
And just like not every character is worthy of a fight scene, not every character can be made gay. My problem with it isn't that Q is gay per se, but that without there being anything more than simply removing a single letter from the original script,
he'll be here in 20 minutes.
It was obviously done solely for clout without actually doing anything at all, really, and that's what bugs me. And I'm not the only one that feels that way. The Q actor, Ben Whishaw, who is gay in real life, admitted that it was a bad move. And I feel bad for the guy because because in all honesty, he probably felt taken advantage of, which he was. They flaunted his sexuality for 0.5 seconds simply for PR purposes because they think it'll sell more tickets to a modern progressive audience. But while it may get that audience to woo for a brief moment, as a Bond fan, it's just insulting and cheap. But before you accuse me of hate again, let's explore why. We've had gay characters before and none of us ever bat an eye. I mean, hell, for all we knew, Desmond Llewellyn's Q was gay the entire time and nobody knew it because that's his private life and his sexuality wasn't ever relevant, you know, other than that time he was gang by a bunch of octopuses.
Oh, cut it out. We haven't time for that. Later, perhaps.
As opposed to Bond, whose sexuality is exclusively relevant. Sex is just as, if not more important than any gadget Bond has ever utilized. I've even stated previously that if Bond had to bang a guy to save the world, he'd probably snore to Cialis and do it.
On a mission, I am expected to sacrifice myself.
The only ancillary character whose sexuality ever mattered in Bond's world was Moneypenny, and for obvious reasons, because she was always yearning for Bond's wedding bed. Remember though, she isn't just another Bond girl for 007 to conquer, but rather represents that eternally present backup plan for trading in his extravagantly short-lived life as a spy for a comfortably boring normal home life. A dynamic that elevated Moneypenny beyond the simple role of just being the secretary to Basil Exposition. MQ, their home life never came into it, mostly because, like Bond, these guys are married to the job. M gave the orders and Q mastered the quarter that facilitated executing those orders. I understand why between these two possible options of regulars, they went with Q for the gay status, because he's the more eccentric of the two, but what I know for sure and what I'm certain the writers figured out as soon as they made that decision was that there's literally nothing you can do with it other than have Q be attracted to Bond for the obvious reason that 99% of the time Q shares the screen with Bond and Bond happens to be a very attractive man, so if you're going to inject sexuality into the mix, 2 + 2 equals Q being attracted to Bond. Think about it, what else is there? It's not like gender flipping or race swapping, which is all optics. If Q was black or a woman, we would see it right away. Boom, that's all the work that needs to be done. But you make a character gay, okay, now how are you going to express that without seeing it in action or representing it visually in a stereotypical way that would offend the pandas? Our interpretation of the Moneypenny VR scene in Die Another Day, where Moneypenny is engaged in a simulation programmed by R, in which James Bond comes into the room and bangs you, as if R secretly programmed that for himself because he's secretly gay, makes way more use of someone's homosexuality than this movie ever does. But the filmmakers would want to avoid that because it would only ever be played for laughs, which would easily offend the pandas, trapping them in a stupid and forced scene where Q has to cancel a date because Bond shows up. I can already anticipate a comment saying something like, gay characters can't be taken seriously, they're just there for laughs like a clown or something. The answer is neither yes nor no, because that's a very broad question. What simplifies it in this instance is that we're talking about a very specific character with a very simple role of being Gadget Man, whose sexuality was never relevant in the first place. So there's no way of showcasing it seriously without it being obtrusive.
Having problems keeping it up, Q?
And no way of presenting it comedically without being offensive.
Balls, Q?
Hence why most of the time, before the age of pandas, it was used comedically.
This case seems quite attractive. For a lady.
If you're going to make Q gay, make him gay. Give him a Daniel Craig man crush as big as mine. Have him make Bond unnecessarily take his shirt off whenever he needs to inject smart blood or something. But whatever you do, do something with it or I'll call you out for what you're actually doing. Pandering.
The Me Too movement and stuff, they were trying to answer to all these things because they didn't want to upset people because they're like, well, we're still making this franchise.
They should be shameless. Like, if they thought in the long term, they would be shameless. They'd be like, hey, look, this is James Bond. This is male fantasy. We sell male fantasy. Instead, they try to cater to everybody, and that's where they fail. You try to cater to everybody, and you're not going to please anybody. And
that's
you make
where
a
I
bad
would put
movie.
it under the Moonraker threshold right there, is just because, like, that's where the similarity really, really lies, is like, oh, we're chasing trends.